Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to Estonia once again, and we're going to have a look at a beer from a brewery that has never featured on the channel before. It's been a very long time since I've had a beer from these guys, but they're very well respected and very well established Estonian brewery, and as I've told you in previous reviews, the Estonian beer scene is immensely strong these days. There's some great stuff over there, and if you get the chance to try some of the Estonian beers, I highly recommend that you do. With this brewery, in honesty, it's a bit of a shame that I've not been able to review something from these guys on the channel a bit earlier. But very much looking forward to this one. It's supposed to be a very good beer, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to go to a little place called Saue, which is to the southwest of Tallinn, the capital city in the northwest of Estonia, and we're going to have a look at a beer from Õllenaut. So this particular beer is called IMPi. It comes in at 10% ABV, and they're describing this one as an American Imperial Stout. So yeah, very curious to see how this one turns out. This is one of two Õllenaut beers that you'll see reviewed over the next little while. The other one that I have is a really interesting and very quirky style, and that was the only one that I was able to bring back from Estonia, but you'll see that reviewed at a later date. This one was actually given to me by Riku, my Finnish beer mule. So this beer arrived in Riku box number 2. So again, a massive thank you to Riku for making this review possible. I just asked him to pick me up something else from Õllenaut because I wanted to do at least 2 reviews from these guys, and this was the one that he recommended. So yeah, very curious to see how this one turns out, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on it. Nice to have Õllenaut on the channel for the first time as well. So yeah, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I'll do in the future from Õllenaut. This is the very first time they're featuring on the channel, as I mentioned, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for the Estonian beers that I'm reviewing for you. That's been added to whenever I get the opportunity, but we've still got quite a few Estonian beers in the fridge to work our way through, so you will see that added to regularly over the next little while. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Õllenaut before we taste the beer. So yeah, as I've mentioned to you already, Õllenaut are based in Saue, which is to the southwest of Tallinn, the capital city in the northwest of Estonia, and these guys released their first beers in 2013. The two men behind the company are Ilmar Raini and Urmas Ruts, and they've got quite an interesting background. So Ilmar was apparently a chef, and he became a hobby brewer a little bit later on. He would brew in his garden shed because he couldn't find the beers that he wanted in Estonia, so his solution was, of course, to make them for himself. But he started brewing back in 2009 using a small 55-litre kettle, but he soon found that he really enjoyed it and wanted to turn professional, so he drew up a business plan, and at this point he was joined by Urmas Ruts, who came from a background in economics and finance. But together they secured a bank loan and then bought a brew kit from the UK, and they set up their brewery in Saue, which, as I mentioned, is to the southwest of Tallinn. And the first bottles were produced there in 2013, and they were on the shelves by the winter. But over the years, they continued to expand the brewery and build their exports. At maximum, they were able to produce around 150,000 litres with their original equipment, but they focused I think since inception, on including some local ingredients in their beers, including birch. So these guys actually have a birch ale. They've also got the sauna beer, which is quite well known as well. So the next time I go to Estonia, I will need to see about picking that up actually. But yeah, I will try and get a few more beers from Õllenaut reviewed on the channel over the next little while. But in summer of 2019, these guys launched a crowdfunding exercise to fund new infrastructure for the brewery, namely a 10 hectolitre brew kit which came from Zip in Hungary, and filling lines and stuff like this. And in total, they managed to raise about 320,000 euros, and the total investment in their new brewery building that they had was around 1.3 million euros. So they've got a whole state-of-the-art facility down there, which is pretty impressive. But since this investment, They've been producing many different types of beer, and they've also started producing kvass and alcohol-free beers as well. That seems to be a big thing in Estonia at the moment, is alcohol-free beer, because I know Pohjola were actually producing quite a lot of that as well. There seems to be new techniques and things they can use to get pretty good alcohol-free beers these days. I've not got too much experience with kvass, but I know it's like a very low alcohol fermented kind of drink. I think it's made from bread, if I remember rightly, so maybe I need to have a look at some of the Õllenaut kvasses at some stage as well. But as of March 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 85 different kinds of beer, and there's a whole host of different styles there. When I was in Estonia, I saw that they had a series of like lager beers. They had a Helles and a Dunkel. I forget what they call the lighter one, but it was the Tume was the one that caught my eye. I love Dunkel beers, and they had that in quite a few of the supermarkets and things. I just didn't have room to bring back any of those, unfortunately. But yeah, they've got a whole host of different styles of beer, and if you're interested in those, go and check out the website, of course. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Õllenaut for the moment. It was actually a little bit difficult to find information on this brewery. I had to rake through a lot of different places to put together those brewery notes for you. But yeah, that's it. So yeah, if you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, I think that's about time to get on and actually review this one. So there. But yeah, I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork before we open it up. I have to say, that does look very, very nice actually. This one, from what I gather, I think this was one that Riku said that he'd had, and he recommended it. So I was like, well, Riku's always recommended me some very good Finnish beers, so why not? He likes to go down to Tallinn and go on beer runs and things. A lot of Finnish people like to do that. For those of you watching outside of Europe, as you can see, plain bottle cap on this one. For those of you watching outside of Europe, Estonia actually has the statistic of being the most alcohol consuming nation in Europe, and the main reason for that is because the Swedes go over, the Finns come down on the ferry to Tallinn, they go on booze cruises, they buy up a shitload of stuff and take it home, so that kind of messes up the Estonian statistics. Lots of Finns and Swedes go to Estonia to have a bit of a booze cruise, which is always kind of interesting. You can always see the drunk Swedes and drunk Finns around Tallinn when you go there. But yeah, interesting anyway. But yeah, beautifully presented beer, this one. The Õllenaut artwork is pretty cool. This little kind of man that you see here, you'll see him featuring on pretty much all of the Õllenaut beers. But yeah, the name of course is just basically, I think it's a play on the word astronaut or cosmonaut or whatever, just basically beer knot essentially. So Õllenaut, Ulu of course is the Estonian word for beer. But yeah, 330ml bottle. This one, I'm not sure exactly what this would have cost. I'm guessing somewhere in the region of €5 or maybe €6. Let's say 6 for safety. So that's roughly around, you know, that's maybe about £5 sterling, maybe about $7 American for those of you watching in different places. But yeah, 330ml bottle. This one at 10% Imperial Stout. It says on the side here, a strong American stout brewed with 9 different malts and 5 American hops, and it's recommended for eating with smoked meats, cheesecake, or with strong cheese. Yeah, that would be very good. But yeah, let's get it out and we'll get on with the tasting then. Really looking forward to this. And of course, this is review number 2799. So tomorrow you're going to have review number 2800. So I need to decide what I'm going to review for that. But I felt it was time for another Estonian beer. Yeah, is this beer going to get any head? Let's sugar up the last little bit. See what we can get. Yeah, there you go. Just give it a bit of aggression and that will do it. Yes, no sediment left in this one either. But yeah, let me just line that up so that my OCD is happy, and there we go. So yeah, before it disappears, you can see that the head on this one has poured to be about a 1/3 finger head. It's got a lovely kind of fawn colour to it, a very light sort of beige, you know, and it is very, very foamy, but that's going to fade away very soon and just leave a nice kind of foamy layer around the edge of the glass. But yeah, that looks very nice. 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there. But overall, it looks pretty nice. If we shine the light through this beer, it actually, this one, I think, you know, it's obviously with dark beers like this, you can't really see through them because of the colour. But if you look at the way the light travels through this one, you get a really nice kind of Coca-Cola, Pepsi coloured edge to it. So I think this beer actually would be quite clear. I think just a little bit of a kind of natural haze to it, but the way the light comes through it from the top is very nice. It looks like a really, really nice beer, this one, to be honest with you. But yeah, in terms of colour, definitely a sort of dark ebony kind of thing, and this is of course exactly what you would expect from an Imperial Stout. The colour of your beer depends on a couple of things. One, the type of malts that you use. Two, the length of your wort boil. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugar's caramelised, thus you get a darker beer. But that depends, the colour depends in the first instance on the type of malts that you use. But yeah, barrel aging and adjuncts can of course play a role with that as well, but I think in this case those are not at play. But yeah, it says on the back there this one contains wheat malt as well, so that will give you a degree of haziness to the beer too. It's usually the oats and the wheat and the yeast to an extent that determine the haziness of your beer. But yeah, nothing particularly surprising about this beer in terms of its appearance when you consider what style it is. But yeah, let's have a look at the aroma and see how we get on. The head has faded away quite nicely there, but yeah, let's go for it. Oh, that does smell really nice actually. I'll tell you something. First impression of this beer is that it's a really big, just oily Imperial Stout. It smells like one that's had a really long boil to it. You straight away with this one, you smell the chocolate and you smell those really highly caramelized brown sugars. You know, with a big Imperial Stout like this, you're probably talking a boil time of like 4 or 5 hours, something like this, you know, potentially 6. But you know, you can smell it straight away with those brown sugars, and we'll break down the aroma a little bit more intensely in a second. But the aroma of this is lovely. It's really complex. This will take a little bit of time to go through, but the first impression of that is it's just a big oily sweet thing, but it's definitely got that roasty toasty backbone to it to let you know this is an Imperial Stout. I think this is going to be a monster. So yeah, let's break down that aroma a little bit more then, but the impact of that aroma is lovely. So, pardon me, but yeah, as I say, straight away with this beer, you can smell it's got this, the first impression you have of it, it's a very layered aroma. I mean, underneath you can pick up, there is a little bit of that toasty, well-fired bread crusty thing. There is an element of breadiness and stuff in there as well. So yeah, it's interesting as well that they choose to use all American ingredients for this, but then again, they are calling it an American Imperial Stout. So it's an interesting idea, definitely. So I'm guessing there will be a little bit of two-row and crystal and things like that in this one. And of course, you know, if you were using European malts, you would use, you know, the likes of Special B, you would use Carafa and things like this. So yeah, that's maybe why the aroma is so striking, come to think of it. But yeah, definitely a bit of a toasty, well-fired bread crusty note underneath it. You've got a lovely kind of brown bready smoothness in there as well, but those don't dominate the aroma. They just kind of smell a little bit like the backbone. There's one or two little woody hints in there as well, and one or two little nutty elements, but it's all about the chocolate and the brown sugars. So the thing that jumps out of this aroma at you right away is that sort of dark chocolate, but the chocolate almost just has a little bit of dryness to it, which is kind of interesting. It's not charred, but it just comes across as sort of dry. If you think about, if you smell the inside of a in Sweden, of course, it would be Oh Boy, but I think the universal one would be Nesquik. If you smell the inside of one of these boxes of Nesquik, if you smell the inside of one of these boxes of Nesquik, then you, if you smell the inside of the box of one of these, the boxes of one of these Nesquik powder things, that's what it really reminds you of. It's just got that dryness and almost powderiness there, and it's a nice dark chocolate as well. I think we're talking, you know, a sort of 70-80% cocoa chocolate. So I love how that goes together, but that sits on top of the kind of bready notes that I was talking about earlier. But you get a good bit of fruitiness in the middle of the nose with this one, and that's how you can tell it's a kind of darker cocoa chocolate. But we'll come to the fruits a little bit later, because some of them of course will be coming from the hops. But yeah, the brown sugary notes in this one are very, very nice. They're very highly caramelized. I mean, it's definitely a big treacle molasses sort of thing you're getting out of this one, absolutely. yeah, there's not really a biscuity element to this one. Quite often in these stouts you can get like a McVitie's digestive biscuit element to it, but no, this is a really highly caramelised, treacly molasses sort of thing. So I really like how that pieces together in this one. So really big, highly caramelised treacle molasses sugars in this one. I don't get so much of like a sweet caramel out of it, you know, and some of the fruity notes, those deep red fruity notes from the chocolate really kind of overpower some of the sweetness that you might get from this one in a sense. So it's that big, dark, oily brown sugar that you get out of this one. But yeah, the malt base of this is really interesting. In some ways it's very straight shooting, but in other ways it's just so different that it's very striking. I think that's a fair way to kind of, that's a fair statement to make about this beer. It's beautiful. It really smells very, very nice. Yeah, I think that describes the malty side of things quite well, to be honest with you. Hoppy wise then, what would we say about the green component here? You know, for me, there is a little touch of earthiness to this one. There's a good little bit of kind of floral aromaticity coming out of this beer as well, which I think is interesting. I've got an idea of what hops might be in this one. I always like playing guess the hops with beers. It's a little bit harder with stouts though, right enough. But yeah, there is still a bit of a green component to this one. I'm not sure if it says when it was bottled. Does it say? It says, well, it does say best before the 5th of December 2041, but yeah, we're cracking into it a little bit early. So yeah, maybe it's been bottled. I don't know why they would say 2041. It doesn't say. It would be nice. I wish that in a lot of the breweries I wish that they would put bottled on dates as well, because it's always nice to know that. Because I mean, the thing with Imperial stouts is you can age these for quite a while, obviously, but you can smell that this one still has quite a significant. You can smell that this one still has a bit of quite a significant hoppy, character into it. So obviously, the longer you age this beer, the more the green component is going to drop out of it. But there's quite a nice bright floral note still in there. It's not spicy or anything like that, but there's a wee touch of grassy zestiness coming out of the beer. But obviously that will mellow out the longer that you have the beer. But on the fruity side of things, it's quite sharp actually. For me, there's a lot of raisiny notes coming out of this one. You do get a bit of that juicier plum in there. There's some really nice, you get a nice little bit of fig in there, and there's quite a lot of black. There's a juicier black currant sitting underneath, but then you've got the sharper blackberry sitting on top of that. So for me, the fruity side of this beer is actually quite sharp. So yeah, definitely blackberries and a more kind of raisiny note to it, and then you've got some of those fruity notes coming out of the chocolate too. So it's a lovely smelling beer. I have to say, I like how the aroma of this one goes together, but quite different from a lot of stouts I've had recently. But yeah, it really sweetens up to a good degree as well. So yeah, it works really nicely, that. So definitely, if you get this beer, take a bit of time and just mull over the aroma before you get stuck into it. For me, that's always half the experience with beer, whiskey and sake and things like that. The aroma is always good. But yeah, I think it's about time that we have a try of this one then. So this one is the IMPi, an American Imperial Stout, 10% ABV from Õllenaut in Saue, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, to the southwest of Tallinn, the capital, in the northwest of Estonia. Let's get stuck into this one. Thank you again to Riku, of course, for getting the hold of this beer for me. Slange, skull, cheers, Tervi 6. There we go. Ooh. This is going to be one of these ones where it takes a wee bit of time just to show you what it's all about. First impression, it's a very silky stout. That it's very silky and very slick. At the moment, I'm only really getting the kind of base roasty layer out of this, but I think it will start to show its colours a little bit later on. I'm going to say though straight away, that's a really very, very nice beer. Quite an old school stout as well. I mean, it's nice to have things like this because, you know, these days you're getting a lot of these big pastry stouts and big sweet things. It's nice to come back to something like this that's got a bit of that roasty, toasty backbone, which is what you would want from an Imperial Stout. So yeah, I'm glad that I got this one, or glad that Riku got this for me, I should say. But yeah, this beer does get a thumbs up from me. What actually happened with Õllenaut was, or with my reviews of Õllenaut, I filmed an Õllenaut review maybe about 4 years ago or something like that. It was an IPA, if I remember rightly, and my computer died. The hard disk on it just went, so I lost it. I forget what the name of the beer was, but it was an IPA. So I did actually film an Õllenaut review at one stage, and then my computer died, and it's only now that we're actually able to get an Õllenaut review out there, which is a shame. But it's definitely, in fairness, it's been worth the wait for this beer, absolutely. But yeah, that's a really silky stout, and it's stupidly drinkable for a 10% as well. Let's just say that it's just ridiculous how easy that beer goes down for a 10%er. But yeah, where to start with this one then? Let's try and break down the flavour for you. It's like this beer definitely does take a little bit of time to show you what it's all about. But yeah, straight away the middle of your palate is blanketed with that roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust, and it's got a really nice. It really just that dominates the backbone of the beer. The roasty, toasty characteristics in this one are a lot more prominent in the flavour than the aroma would have you believe. But on top of that, though, you do get a smooth kind of brown bready layer. It's more of a wholemeal bread, more of a kind of grainy brown wholemeal bready sort of thing that comes out of this, rather than being like a sweet rye bread or anything like that. So yeah, I do like how that side of the beer goes together. It's got a nice roasty, toasty backbone, just to let you know, yeah, this is an Imperial Stout. But yeah, you get one or two little woody flavours coming out of this one. If you go to the front corners of your palate and diagonally back, you will get one or two little woody aromas coming out of the beer. Flavours, not aromas. I keep doing that in these reviews, mixing up flavour and aroma. Brain's just dying these days, guys. But yeah, the backbone of this beer is just really nice, and it really does mellow out the more that you drink of it, this beer as well. You start to get a little bit more of a kind of breadiness out of this one, and I wouldn't be surprised if some of the malts in this, as I say, are crystal and Turo. Some of the smoothness that you get out of these are just really, really nice. But yeah, in the very centre of your palate, you've got a nice, you do get a little bit of the brown sugar. The brown sugar starts to come out of this, but between the bread and the brown sugars, you can feel that sort of powdery chocolate that I was talking about. There's a really nice, sort of, how would we say? There's a really nice, just sort of dry, powdery chocolate in there. And like I said, it's quite a high percentage cocoa chocolate. 70-80% cocoa, definitely. So that kind of sits on top of the bready side of the beer, and it gives the beer a little bit of its dryness along with that bread crusty note. But in the very centre of your palate, you can feel that there is a good little bit of brown sugar in there, and it's quite a highly caramelised treacle molasses sort of thing. But the brown sugar in this beer, it only really comes out when the liquid's on your tongue, if that makes sense. It's interesting. I thought this beer would have had a big oily brown sugar presence in the middle of the palate there, going from the aroma, because there's a lot of brown sugar comes out of this one, I think, in the aroma. So this is a beer that is quite different, actually, from what you would think it's going to be in the aroma. So yeah, I mean, yeah, the brown sugar there, it's in the very middle of the palate. As you move further out from it, it develops, you can feel the sort of concentration of the brown sugars just thinning out a wee bit, and it becomes a little bit more of a kind of toasty, it does become a little bit more of a sort of toasty caramel sort of thing as you move out further out from the centre. And probably a lot of that will be coming from the alcohol flavours. In honesty, it doesn't, the sort of mouthfeel, if you like, and again we'll come back to that later, but it just doesn't feel as if it's such a brown sugary orientated beer, this one, in a sense. You maybe get one or two little biscuity elements as you move out towards the very edges of the palate too. So yeah, it's definitely about that toasty well-fired bread crust, wholemeal bread, the powdery chocolate, and then there's just a little bit of that brown sugary note to it as well. So it really is quite straight shooting actually, but I think there's probably, when it said there was 9 malts in this, I think there's a few different varieties of crystal in this, I would say, and probably, I don't know, maybe I'm a bit less sure about two-row, but I think there will be a couple of crystal elements in this one. But yeah, it's interesting for sure. It's a really old school straight shooting stout, this one, in a lot of ways. So yeah, I like it, definitely. But on that border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you can feel the sort of, you can feel a little bit of a slightly bigger breadiness just builds up, and you get just on top of that, you get a really strong bitterness. There you just get a little line of like really well fired stuff, and then on the back third of the palate, you've got a nice, you can really feel the toasty grainy notes. You get a real bit of that kind of black malt. I wouldn't be surprised if this beer does have straight up black malt in there, because it really does have a little bit of that almost harshness to it just at the very back of the tongue, if you can say. But on that back third of your palate, you can feel some of the yeasty notes. You do get a little bit of that lighter, airy, yeasty sort of thing just kind of sitting on top of the back third of the palate as well. So yeah, the sort of thickness of the flavour, if you like, or the height of the flavour, it kind of goes like this at the very back of the palate, and then as you move towards the border region with the middle third of your tongue, it kind of goes down quite sharply like this, and then you've just got quite a slick and quite dense layer in that middle third of your palate. So it's interesting for sure. But yeah, very straight shooting beer this. The more I drink of it, the more I think, yeah, this is a really straight shooting old school beer actually. But on the hoppy side of things then, back corners of the palate, there's a good little bit of earthiness comes out of this one. As you move further forward, it develops a little bit of a kind of herbal quality in there. Then as you move towards as you move further forward along the front sides of your tongue, it develops a little bit of a kind of slight spiciness there. There's definitely a bit of pine resiny character to this one. I would not be surprised if two of the hops in this are Chinook and Columbus. Would not be surprised by that at all, because the green components, the spiciness of the Columbus, the sort of piney depth, if you like, of the Chinook, I think they're quite obvious in this one, to be honest. So I wouldn't be surprised if those are two of the 5 that are in this. Round the front curve of the palate, it's got a little bit of a grassiness to it, and it does have a wee tiny bit of a zesty quality, to be honest with you. So yeah, it's interesting how that goes together. But the green component for me really, it comes across as more spicy and floral. I think that's where that's the biggest part of it. But let's focus on the fruity side of things then. Let's focus on that front third of the palate. So yeah, on that border region between front third and middle third of your tongue, again you get a little bit of that slightly thicker bready note and a really well fired grainy component there, but at the base of that front third of your palate is actually quite a smooth wholemealy brown bread underneath. Then on top of that you get that little oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. So if you go to the back of it, if you go to the back of that front third of your palate, you can, the fruits aren't anywhere near as sharp in this as the aroma gives you the impression as well. So again, the flavour you get out of this deviates quite a little bit from the aroma. But when you take the beer in, you know, it does have a little bit of that raisiny sharpness, a little bit of the juicy blackberry sort of things to it. But yeah, at the back of that front third of your palate, you do get a wee bit of a juicy plum, but very quickly as you move further forward, it becomes a lighter sort of figgy element. Then as you reach the front half of that that front third of your tongue, there's definitely a bit of blackcurrant in there. There's a bit of an oily, but there's a little bit more of a kind of, brain's not working, there's a little bit more of a kind of oily blackberry sort of quality sitting on top of that as well, and you get a wee bit of sharpness out of that too. When it comes to the hops on that side, I think I've got 2 already. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a little bit of Cascade, could be one, because there's some of the figgy notes are making me think Cascade. Summit is also one that's quite common, that's commonly used in these beers to give you some of these red fruits. But I wonder about Eureka, because it's got a lovely juiciness to it and it's quite prominent on the blackberries. So I wonder about Eureka. The other option would be like Williamette. But I don't know, there's something just telling me that it could be Eureka in this one. It's a very high alpha acid hop, that's like 16% or something. And I don't know how old this recipe is, and I think Eureka might actually be a bit of a newer hop, but don't quote me on that. but the juiciness and the prominence of the blackberries in this one, it's 5 American hops that's here, so that that puts out some of the English ones and German ones that it could be. So I wonder if there is a bit of Eureka in this. It's the blackberry. It has a really nice juicy and oily blackberry note to it the further you go into the aftertaste with this one, and that really makes me wonder. So I think, yeah, maybe Columbus, Chinook, then potentially Cascade, Summit, and Eureka. Potentially Williamette could be another option, but not 100% sure. I think some of the hops, I think I might have got quite a few of the hops right in this one, but we'll see. Maybe the brewers will watch it and let me know. Who knows? But yeah, it's got a lovely fruitiness to this one. It's got a little bit of an oily fruitiness, but then it's actually quite juicy as well. It comes in with a little bit of sharpness. It gets smoother and lighter and juicy, but then you get a nice more oily, juicy character out of it as well. But yeah, the fruitiness out of this beer is really nice. But yeah, I think that covers the flavour profile of this beer quite nicely. In terms of the mouthfeel then, just to round off the review, like I said, this beer, it's actually top end and mid-bodied. This is one of the lighter stouts that I've come across in recent times. Carbonation is very, very smooth. It's got a really slick and silky mouthfeel to it, but it's definitely not the thickest I've come across, and it's stupidly drinkable for a 10%. You do get a wee bit of alcohol warmth down here, but yeah, there's a good little bit of bitterness to it, though. I wouldn't be, this has got to be like, 90, 190 or 100 IBUs, something like that. There's a lot of roasty, toasty character to the malt as well, so the bitterness comes from both the malty and the hoppy side of things, but there's a wee bit of sweetness builds out of this one, and there's a good little bit of a juicy, just fruity, there's a bit of fruity sharpness to it, but it's got a little bit of an oiliness to the fruity character as well. So it kind of gives you a bit of everything, this one. It's a proper old school stout, this, but I think it's really nicely done, and it gets a big thumbs up from me. So well done to Õllenaut for this beer. Really enjoyed this one, and I look forward to the other beer that I picked up from these guys too. But yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. This one was the IMPi Imperial Stout, 10%, an American Imperial Stout from Õllenaut in Saue, to the southwest of Tallinn in the northwest of Estonia. Really enjoyed this, and thank you to Riku for making this review possible. But yeah, let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Õllenaut. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Let me know some other Estonian beers and breweries you guys would like me to check out, and I'll catch you guys in the next review. Slàinte, skål, cheers, tervisex. See you guys very, very soon. This one, the IMPi, was really nice, very old school. I really enjoyed this review. Cheers.